Hi, this is Pete Johnson with Apollo Matrix. In today's session, I'm going to review the presentation given at the Tobii iTrack Behavior Conference last Thursday on the topic of gaze and touch tracking for native mobile development. So to frame our discussion, I'm going to review how Apollo creates mobile apps. This is probably a familiar process or phasing of process for you for strategy, design, development, and ongoing support or continuous development and maintenance. This is, for native mobile, however, a really compressed process. It's about 3 to 5 months in duration. And on top of that, it involves a wide variety of skill sets, from project management to creative, branding, visual design, user experience design, back-end development, API and web services development, Android development skills, iOS development skills, and then various specialties such as mobile commerce, advertising, augmented reality, gamification, and analytics, just to name a few. So I'm going to zoom into the strategy phase here and look at something that we do that lasts about a week to 2 weeks that kind of exemplifies the strategy phase. It's called the Discover and Define Workshop. We start out by reviewing the vision of the organization and then defining the mission for the product. And to support that mission, there are specific goals and objectives for the product. And then we start to define who our user will be by defining personas. And examples of personas might be a law enforcement officer as a primary persona and a manager back at the bureau as the secondary persona, or a fashion scout as the primary persona, and executives at headquarters for a international brand company back at headquarters. A social communications map is then developed that shows how these personas interact either with each other or with the market in general. And this has the effect of confirming use cases and user stories for how the product will ultimately be used. We look at the back-end information architecture and content strategy. If there are existing back-end databases or a CMS, we look at that to make sure that the app concept and high-level design can be supported by what's there and plan accordingly if it needs to be extended. We also involve a technical lead who takes a look at what the ideation and the collaboration, the ideation and design activities are starting to form up, and says this is the best approach from a technical architecture standpoint, and that sort of sets up the project for the rest of the cycle. From there, we go into user experience design, like the architect who draws line drawings of the building that's being planned. We draw line drawings of the screens. The proportions and the exact look of them is not there yet, but the workflow, the user experience, and the steps involved in each key mobile behavior are starting to become evident. We dial this down to a pretty good level of detail before starting on visual design. Visual design is informed by what we call mood boards or project style guides. For existing brands, we look at the logo and style guide that the company has and extend that to mobile by choosing appropriate fonts, shapes, colors, edges, photo stock, and voice of the text that is being used within the app. For example, being very casual or being kind of formal, or having more words to explain versus having it be quite Spartan. These things are all part of the general design mood of the product and are used to inform the visual design. Visual design then develops screen images that are pixel perfect and shows them in the same flow as the wireframes did, and serves as a representation of what's about to be developed. When they're approved, development begins. So let's say we're now in development, but we want to have a performance measurement system in place to tell us how we're doing once this app gets into the wild. Well, when we were in the strategy phase and we were defining goals and objectives, and we were defining in essence, what the key mobile behaviors would be to support the mission of the product. We were starting that analytics plan. And in design phases, we are starting to define events within the app, such as sharing an item, purchasing, reading an article, or getting to the bottom of that article, looking at related articles related to that main article, whatever the events are that we think are important, and then instrumenting them or sort of stringing them into funnels where there's a sequential flow of activity in order to complete a given mobile behavior. In development, we are literally inserting code at the point of each of those events, and then in the analytics tool of choice, we're starting to hang those together in funnels so that we'll later be able to track those. And we can test those graphs even though we only have user acceptance testing activities going on the app during the QA process of development to make sure that we have a working report card in place, if you will. Then as the app is deployed into the wild, the numbers start to come in and questions start to come up. So there may be numbers that make us ask the questions, do users even want to be able to do this in the first place? If we put augmented reality in the app, it could be a matter of how well it's working, or it could be whether or not they're even interested in doing that in the context of this key mobile behavior. That's a strategic issue, but we can eliminate whether or not it's a usability issue by gaze and touch testing. Do users even notice the item? If we are hoping that users will favorite various soccer teams and give us analytics as a result, and this isn't happening per our performance measurement, then maybe that's because they can't see where they would even favorite a soccer team, for example. Is this harder than it needs to be? As you know, in mobile apps, if you often start out to do something, if it becomes too tedious or lengthy a process, abandonment occurs, and that is difficulty or comprehension affecting the completion of key mobile behaviors. Are we using our time well with the user? As you know, mobile apps are small bundles of functionality that support specific tasks, and there's a reason for this. It's because of the form factor of mobile that we're talking about handsets and tablets, and these are expected to be used in a time-sliced manner and are often used for specific reasons while on the go. So we only have a limited amount of time to get the job done that our key mobile behaviors ask for, and that is something we don't want to squander. So we have to look at, are we asking too much time of the user in completing a given task, and this requires measurement at that time. Is there too much to do in this app or too little to do in this app? You've seen apps that just have a few RSS feeds. They maybe get one look and done. And there's apps that we refer to as kitchen sink apps that have everything about the company and photo galleries and videos and this, that, and the other thing. And they are just trying to put everything that would be in a website in an app. And this is not generally in conformance with overall expectations across the mobile landscape as to what is going to happen when one opens an app and how quickly it's going to happen and how clean the design is, etc. So we have to look at if there's too much or too little going on in the app. That may be why we're losing completion of key mobile behaviors. Do users come back? While an app might have an excellent concept or be appealing from the perspective of the App Store and get lots of downloads, we may not see the sessions that we expected. So there could be a usability problem there or just some kind of an execution problem versus the concept itself being pretty good. So the answers that we're getting in gaze plus touch testing help us discern if there's difficulty. They help us discern if the feature or that leads the user down a key mobile behavior funnel is attractive enough. We have to understand if they can really, if the user is understanding what needs to be done. And we have the opportunity to see if users have intentions that run crosswise to the key mobile behaviors that are designed into the app. This can often give us insights into how the product should be designed for the future. And then compatibility is important from the standpoint of our persona, and our persona is going to have other popular apps on their device that work in a certain way, have certain style to them, certain controls, and in their opinion, probably a certain quality of user experience that the subject app needs to be compatible with. So here I'm going to provide you with a couple of quick snippets, just a couple minutes each, on two different apps that we recently developed. This first one is for the American Association for the Advancement of Science. It is not, as we speak here in September, released yet, but will be released in late fall, early winter of 2014. The mission of the product is to expand the interest in readership in science, and then secondarily to encourage people with undergraduate degrees to move into careers of science. And it provides short articles on developments in science, wonderful images, videos, podcasts, and does this with a great iPad user experience that encourages people to stay with the application and to share it on as many social media platforms as possible. To the secondary objective of encouraging careers in science, there is a significant jobs section, and this little snippet covers that area of the app. In the visualization, you will see two kinds of visualizations. One is purple dots when the study participant touches the screen. The second is red dots connected by lines for gaze fixation and sequence of gaze fixation. And you'll see an inset of the study participant themselves as well. When we do this, we have the study participant think aloud for helping us, but when we actually make the deliverable during the development cycle, we do a voiceover of narration. So you'll hear one of our business analysts commenting as the usability study progresses through this little video.
For this usability study, we gave a user several tasks which were designed to experience most of the app and also to investigate areas that we thought were in need of being looked at. So the first task was for them to navigate to the job search section of the app and to favorite a job. And as you can see here, he just did that, clicking in the upper right corner on the star, and this job is now favorited. The second task that we asked was for the user to search for jobs in physical sciences. And the idea behind this task was to test how intuitive it is for them to use the search feature and what they go to first. And as you can see, he went directly to the physical sciences on that dropdown, so he was able to complete that task fairly easily. And now filtered by only jobs that are in physical sciences, we asked him to just favorite another job, which he has just done. The final task in the jobs section of the app was to find all jobs in Texas for biologists. And to do this, the user had to go into the search by area function and then search for biologists. And you can see he's doing that now. And he actually clicks both World, North America, and then Texas on the dropdown, which is going to give him all three of them, which led to a little bit of confusion on his part because he wanted to search for those that were only in Texas. And as you can see here, some of the results that are popping up are in Maine or in California, so not just in Texas. And he's going to realize his mistake and go back. And as you can see here, you see both the North and Central America and the United States buttons were checked, so he unchecks those and just leaves the Texas button checked, which will just give him jobs from Texas. And he found a job that was interesting, and he favorited it successfully.
So you saw that study turned up some difficulties in terms of the interpretation of Boolean search uh, structure that is behind the user experience, and there are definite opportunities to help eliminate confusion there. Also, in this same test, while not pictured here, we found that interstitial ads were a little too difficult to eliminate, and sometimes people accidentally launched into a web-based ad when they were trying to get rid of it. And we also found that when a user was playing a podcast and keeping that podcast playing with them as they moved into other sections of the app, that the user interface could become confusing between whether you were playing a podcast or playing a video. So there were several really helpful insights that, while best practices were used and customer and vendor collaborated well to design an app, that before we launched we were able to catch and eliminate. And we'll do this again after the app has been in the wild for 3 months. This next example is an enterprise app, but it's actually a product developed by a company called AT Solutions for other enterprises. And those enterprises are law enforcement, firemen, policemen, EMS, and in some cases military organizations. So what we're testing here is the ability of a user generically, without narrowing it down to any of those personas, but in general users of this app, being able to fill out forms that are in a case file while at the scene of an incident, so that they can submit those forms easily from the field.
The first task that we asked our tester to do was to create a new storyboard from the casebook menu, which is located in the lower left of the splash screen here. And she had no problems doing this. It just took her a minute to get oriented with the screen, but she does bring up the casebook fairly easily. So now the user is in the casebook, they've created a new one, and we move on to the second task. And our second task for this user was to complete this diagram form section. And the idea behind this is to basically see how well they fill out the fields and see if there's any difficulties that come up with either the type of fields that are being filled out or with the order or any other difficulties. And this was fairly straightforward for the user. You can see that she filled out the calendar field by clicking on that pop-up, and now she's filling out some text fields with the pop-up keyboard. Something that's a little interesting is that you can see her actually look at the keys on the keyboard before she clicks on them. So there were a variety of different fields in this test. So some of them are straightforward pop-up keyboard fields. Some of them are drop-down fields like this state field right here. And something interesting that's going to happen is that she gets to this latitude and longitude field, and you can see her giggling there because she doesn't know what latitude and longitude she's at, so she just skips right on by it. And actually there's a button you can press that automatically gets your latitude and longitude. And you can see that she scrolls back up, and she does click that location arrow on the right side, and it automatically fills it out for her. But the first time she saw that, she became confused because she didn't know how you would get that, and she didn't notice that there's a button that would do it automatically.
So hopefully those two examples gave you an idea of the kinds of insights that we are gleaning by doing Gaze plus Touch tracking in the development cycle and shortly thereafter to help us see what features need to be refined within the app. So now I'm just going to summarize a few key points that I think you'll recognize from earlier parts of the presentation. These are 4 main points, starting with the idea of knowing your user. So this is the idea that despite the fact that you may have competitive advantage because of existing systems or market position, there might be, you might be in the business of selling point of sale systems, but you're building an app for the affluent traveler. So we have to stay focused on the affluent traveler. If you're, in a given business, it is easy to lose track of who is this app actually for and what is the world going to look like from their perspective. So know your user. And once you've anchored the app concept securely in the idea of which primary and secondary and tertiary personas are actually going to be using the app, define the key mobile behaviors that you want them to perform. And in doing this, we can extend the design from there to make the paths as high profile as they should be, and as short as they should be, and as easy to accomplish as they should be. And throughout the life cycle, we need to set up in order to be able to measure performance. And by knowing our user, we were able to define key mobile behaviors. By defining key mobile behaviors, we're able to instrument the performance analytics in the app that are going to be meaningful to measuring our success. So in this little example, there is the key mobile behavior of having people apply to jobs through the jobs department of the Science News app. So they might, as an event, have to open jobs department, then open a specific job, and then actually hit apply in order to successfully move through that funnel. Or for sharing career news, which is related to encouraging people to go into the careers of science, there's actually 4 steps. Open the news department for careers, open a career news article, open the social share window, and then actually succeed in sharing that item. So as you see the graph move from event to completion, there is a certain amount of fall off, and we want to measure our performance as we achieve these key mobile behaviors. And as those questions start to be raised, we want to be in a position to learn the user experience. And we at Apollo have found that by doing gaze plus touch tracking mini tests during the development cycle, we've been able to greatly increase the speed of identifying changes to the product and gaining insights for improving the product. I hope that you've found that this presentation has led you in that direction as well. And I do want to thank Tobii Technology for inviting us to speak at the conference, as well as the House of Sweden for hosting. And I look forward to speaking with you next time. Thank you.